Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Monday again, October 21st, 2024. Time for another show. You know, nothing big deal. No big deal this weekend. Nothing to talk about. Donald Trump didn't do anything weird or embarrassing, except, of course, everything that he did. And, I can't come back on the air on Monday and tell you that he didn't spend the weekend telling and then hearing about, well, dick jokes about, or stories anyway, about Arnold Palmer. I'm sure everybody by now has become aware of this. I don't know how much time you spend on something like this afterwards, but it was a little unusual. I think it did catch most people by surprise, although it did harken back to his talk to the Eagle Scouts or the Boy Scouts at the Boy Scout World Jamboree that one time in one of the previous campaigns, where he decided that he'd spin off on a lengthy string of tales about his old yacht partying days for some strange reason. Not really sure what would motivate him to do that. What would motivate him to do this? He was in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, which is the hometown of Arnold Palmer, and I guess lots of things nearby named for him. I believe the airport, did they mention hospital as well? So I guess he thought he was connecting with the locals, for whom, at this point, probably not a overwhelming majority were connected, let's say, to the world of professional golf in the 70s, 60s, 70s. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they're all aware of who Arnold Palmer is just because his name is on everything. But I don't know. I don't know if that was the way to do it. I mean, he was also very good at golf. That might have been something to talk about. He purports to be very good at golf. He's not, but, he enjoys golf. That he could be talking about. But instead, I guess he spent time on the other thing that he enjoys talking about, which is other guys' genitalia. And it took a while for the mainstream media to decide how to handle it and to catch up on the fact that, well, we're going to, if you're going to give the basic ground facts here, you can't really gloss over the fact that that was his opener. So, whatever. But the New York Times struggled with it for a little while, and apparently their reporter on the ground filed a story and update that did, in fact, make prominent mention of that and suggested that it was the highlight of the event, the headline of the event. But the New York Times editors, at least for the first couple of hours following the appearance, did not agree and thought that it would be best to sane wash the whole thing once again. But I guess they got themselves turned around. They were maybe they were the last news outlet in America to realize it's actually, as dumb as this is news that a former president and would-be president spent his time making it in the closing argument phase of the campaign, opening his campaign in the hometown of their big hero and saying, I'll be talking about this, rather than their accomplishments, say, on the golf course or in building up the area and donating buildings and becoming a huge figure there. I don't know. They could have talked about, I guess, Rolling Rock Brewing Company, I think, is there as well. But no, that's not how he spent his time. Then, of course, over the weekend, a little bit of cosplay at a local McDonald's, which, as it turns out, was closed down, and they handpicked some fake customers and have them drive through, and Donald Trump handed them some French fries out the window and complained about things. They dressed him up, interestingly, in an apron that appeared to be in some sort of McDonald's corporate color scheme. I've never seen one of these aprons on anybody ever in any McDonald's that I've ever been to, and I was trying to think, I've probably been to more McDonald's than you should admit to, but I've never run into one of these things. Anyway, so that became the story as well. One, that he was working there. He was looking kind of tired and listless. Handing out French fries, that should have been exciting for him. But then, as it turns out, being at the Potemkin McDonald's, and one in which the franchisee was a fervent Trump supporter, of course, and fighting with his employees over the minimum wage. The best anybody can make out as to why he did it, like why bother, because it was really, to me, something of a Dukakis-looking moment. He stripped off his suit jacket and stayed in the white shirt and overlong red tie, and then wore this apron over it. So it just looked kind of weird, foolish, out of place. Looked like a ridiculous politician trying to make it look like they had the common touch working at the McDonald's or whatever. And like I said, looked like Dukakis in the tank to me, but didn't strike everybody exactly that way. But the idea, I think, was to make fun of. They still think, in right-wing bubble world, they still think that it's a thing that they've really stuck it to Kamala Harris with, that at some point she said, when I was a kid one summer, I worked in McDonald's, which is something that most people, do or have done. And they thought, well, what a huge lie. She's obviously a East Coast elitist, despite having been from the West Coast and not being elite. But, this was, I think, the attack. And not only that even if she did work at McDonald's, you don't have to have any particular training to work at McDonald's. I can learn everything I need to learn in 2 minutes and hand French fries out the window. And therefore, you don't really have to have a $15 minimum wage for people who do this work, because it's so easy. And also, I did it and she didn't. And it's all a big lie of some sort. I just don't know whether any of that was picked up by anyone outside of the really tight right-wing bubble. Those of us who have tried to make some study of what are the idiots in the bubble saying these days, are all we can piece together is, I guess that's it. Because otherwise, the visage of a, overtired, puffy-eyed Donald Trump in a tie and an apron standing around in a McDonald's, I mean, there's nothing virile or manly about it, nothing in particular that looks tough or leaderly, so couldn't really figure out how they were trying to score points with that one. And, it is possible maybe they're just dumb and don't really know how to score points. There is always that. All right. Well, we rushed to the microphone to try to get here on time and sacrificed coffee and breakfast to do it. So Greg Dworkin, who is here with his coffee and breakfast, you can take a turn. I'll have a little. Pass me the coffee.
Yeah,
I'll get on from here.
I'll chat.
Good morning,
you can go get yourself some coffee.
Why, thank you. All right. Now I'm walking away now.
I hear it.
Yeah.
One of the
coffee,
things that I really am enjoying this election season is watching the Drudge Report, of all things. For those of us who are old enough to remember, Drudge used to be super right-wing, but now he's got it in for Trump, and it's sort of fun to see. He's got a picture of Ronald McDonald with a Trump face, or Trump in Ronald McDonald makeup.
It was well done.
Yeah, and he writes, one fry short of a Happy Meal.
Yes.
Felon finds work. Like a felon
that was the other good line, right?
McDonald's for real.
Yeah, I mean, that was, I did see that comment made far and wide that it's so nice that this particular McDonald's the owner was willing to hire somebody, give them a second chance while they're out on bail.
Yeah, basically, which I have to appreciate is used car salesmen, or used car dealership owners, I should say. Probably the salesman too. And small business owners who really would prefer slave labor and child labor are really, really into Trump and Trump supporters.
Yes.
So, if you have to pay a working wage, or if you have to pay adults, or you can't just have kids work for free and slap them around if they don't help you, then, you're a Trump guy if you believe in all of that. And if you don't, you're not.
I don't understand why I can't keep all the money I'm supposed to pay people to do the work around here.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I made the money. What the hell do they know asking for it? That's ridiculous. So, it's just interesting. As far as the Arnold Palmer stuff goes,
oh boy,
seems to me that one of the reasons it was on his mind is he's, losing it.
Yeah.
And he probably flew into Arnold Palmer Airport. And so he likes airports, and the name Arnold Palmer was on his mind.
Yes.
I'm saying that 3 times fast.
I mean, like iced tea, lemonade, terrific. That's one thing you could say.
So he just wound up talking about it because as you decline in mental capacity,
yes,
one of the first things to go are your filters.
Yeah, I think so. He
And
wasn't
so you
good
could
at
see
that to begin with.
There he is. But I thought what was interesting is how the headlines handled it. Of course, the Times, as you pointed out, and the backstory to that is the Times presented it as Trump talks about golf stories at a lively rally.
Yeah. Well, there were golf balls.
People started complaining to the reporter, and the reporter said, "That's not the way I wrote it. You have to complain to the editors." Everybody did.
Yeah.
And so
he was
the New York Times got the message, as they often do after doing everything else. They finally do the right thing. And the way they presented it when the paper was actually published yesterday was, at a Pennsylvania rally, Trump descends to new levels of vulgarity. And the subheader is, the GOP nominee repeated crude insults and his supporters relished each moment, but the display could alienate swing voters.
Ooh.
So they didn't even add the Chuck Todd, and it just might work.
Yeah, they did kind of sort of get around to it. I mean, for new levels of vulgarity. But they did focus on the insults rather than...
Right, so it could be done without being thrown off the air or getting censored on YouTube.
Okay. I mean, let's try that anyway.
Washington Post. Trump fixates on Arnold Palmer as all man in showers during profane rally. Turning his attention to his rival after a meandering start, Donald Trump used profanity to insult Vice President Kamala Harris, which was also true. And then former CNBC reporter Carl Quintanilla had this really nice tweet where he had a collection of headlines like Financial Times, Donald Trump's vulgar rally ramble fuels concerns about his state of mind.
Okay.
I told you about the New York Times one. Then there's Trump kicks off a Pennsylvania rally by talking about Arnold Palmer's genitalia.
Yes, I mean, he did do that.
That was AP. And the Washington Post, as we said, Trump fixates on Arnold Palmer as all man.
Yes,
so
AP and all their AP nests did this correctly.
But you could get it into a family paper.
Yes.
There's no reason for the New York Times to sane wash.
No, that's true. I don't know. I can see them running around saying, "What are we doing with this? How do we?" But yeah, I mean, it's like there's medical terminology.
I see them running around saying, "I know how to deal with this," but the owner's going to get ticked off. So what do they do?
Yeah, it really did look like the writer was sort of doing the cry for help thing there. As people were complaining to him, he's like, "Why don't you? Here's the address of the editor.
Here's the number to
write
complain.
to." Yeah,
no, it's not me.
You should do this. I sent.
When I originally wrote it, I put in all this stuff that you're complaining that I left out.
Yeah, I mean that's got to be a little bit frustrating. You report it and then people say you took it out.
Well, we can't write that. Why can't we write that? He said it. He's running for president. Yeah. It's news. Aren't we supposed to report the news?
I mean, I don't know. Every other situation, you're like, well, I reported it because he said it.
If Biden said it, you'd have it.
Oh, yeah. And it would be huge scandal and outrageous and I don't know what else. But, yeah, I mean, I guess we're all just sad, but I guess we're kind of used to it.
By the way, Arnold Palmer's family came out and said Arnold Palmer knew Donald Trump and really disliked him.
Oh, well, that's useful. I mean, I can imagine that certainly they're not going to have very good things to say about him now. I did notice that the papers actually made contact with the family and did to them what they do to Kamala Harris. Hey, what do you think about what Trump said? You know, and they were like, my dad was kind of a hero to a lot of people, and to me, he's gone now. This is sort of unfair. Why are you asking me about this? I mean, literally, I'm asking the man's daughters, what do you think about that story that Donald Trump told about your dad's genitals? I can't believe you're asking me that. And other people pointing out, it's interesting that the follow-up questions they have for the Arnold Palmer family that are embarrassing to ask, but those they blurt out, but they can't get any follow-up questions asked about why are you taking $10 million bribes from Egypt or anything like that.
Well, but the other side of the coin that is only going to be reported in Pennsylvania, the locals say, around here, Arnold Palmer is a deity.
Yeah, I mean...
And you...
That's why he's on the mind.
And that's what we're taking away from this.
Oh, okay.
And we vote.
All right. Yeah. I mean, I'm hopeful that I'm sure there are some Trumpy people who are like, yeah, he's a deity. And you heard why. Now there are people. No, I think it's the hospitals and foundations and, I don't know if the airport counts.
He's a Greek satyr. Of course he's a deity.
Well, it was an interesting move, to say the least. And it was just odd to me because, I mean, here it was a natural for him. Oh my God, here's a chance to talk about a golfing legend. You love talking about golf. Hey, as I said, I love golf balls. I'm going to talk about them for sure.
The Johnny Carson show.
Yeah, like, holy mackerel. It was a natural setup for you, but you had to go au natural.
Right.
I guess.
But I won't repeat it on the air, this being a family show, but you could Google Arnold Palmer and Johnny Carson, and there's a very funny story there.
Oh, all right. I'm going to set that up.
In any case.
Oh, my God. Right.
Let's talk about
I have to tell Mike Johnson's son about this.
Polls out this morning and what they all mean.
Okay.
That's useful. New high-quality swing state Washington Post polls, this is Matt McDermott reporting, finds Harris with a 286-246 electoral map lead. Georgia, Harris +4, Wisconsin, Harris +3, Pennsylvania, Harris +2, Michigan, Harris +2, Nevada tied, Arizona, Trump +3, North Carolina, Trump +3.
All right.
That's all nice. But basically what it tells you is nothing has changed, regardless of everything you've read over the last week.
I read that nothing changed.
Jane over from Split Ticket has an interesting observation, and it's the same observation I had, but he's nonpartisan, and I'm not. I'm very much partisan.
Okay.
So I'm going to read him, not me.
And
what he said
nice of you.
Is something to note. Now that we've established that the GOP-aligned pollsters aren't actually responsible for the tightening poll numbers, he says maybe a half a point, no more than that. A lot of this comes from Trump consolidating his vote while Harris stays steady. That's the important part. Harris isn't losing. Trump is getting the loose voters who hadn't really come down on his side just yet. And that's not surprising. According to an Emerson poll, which had Harris with a 1-point lead over the weekend, Emerson said some interesting things. They said people who had decided a month ago or more favored Trump. People who decided this month, and especially within the last few weeks, favored Harris.
Okay.
And the 3% who haven't decided yet favor Harris. And that's exactly what I would have expected. And I've said this on the show. I expect late breakers to go for Harris, and so they break a tie, and that's what I think the polls really can't pick up.
Okay.
The other thing that's interesting about the polls is an observation from Matt Grossman, political scientist. There's several Matt Grossmans out there that I follow. This one has 2 N's at the end.
I don't think I've noticed
S-M-A-N-N. And the other Matt Grossman with 1 end is an ex-congressional aide, Republican, who's very sharp and savvy and basically teaches now and is an academic and gives non-neutral reports about Congress. And we talk about him a lot. But this Matt Grossman says, polling errors are normally much larger than current swing state margins. They generally in the same direction across states. So, for example, if they match the same error we saw in 2020, Trump's comfortably ahead. But if they match the same error we saw in 2022, Harris is comfortably ahead.
Okay.
And that's what you would expect in a tie.
Yes, I guess so.
And that's basically what we have. So that's, none of that is surprising. So polls are not going to help you at this point. She's not falling apart in the polls. She's not losing in the polls. She's not dominating the polls. She's not winning the polls. They don't help you. It's telling us it's a close race.
All right.
So therefore, we turn to people who are actually voting. The early vote.
Yes, them.
Guess what? That doesn't help you. It's just telling us it's a close race.
Yeah, well, they aren't allowed to. They can tell you who they voted for, but you aren't allowed to verify it by counting yet.
They can tell you what party they're associated with, except in Georgia, where they only tell you what race, age, sex, favorite color, and favorite movies are.
I see, and whether they've ever seen golfers showering.
Right, or whether they saw Johnny Carson. Remember that Arnold Palmer story. So, Michael Prusser, who's at Decision Desk, says North Carolina early voting morning update, October 21st. That would be today. 4 days down, 13 to go. And the total early in-person vote is as follows. Democrats, 330, 777. Republicans, 317, 068. Others, 279.
Mm-hmm.
Democrats secured a net gain of 10,000 votes on Sunday. They often do. That's also the poll stuff.
All right, yeah.
And we finished the first portion of in-person voting with about a third of the total expected vote. As 1 million voters in North Carolina already.
All right.
Traditionally, the second week in North Carolina early vote is more favorable to Republicans, but with the first half week showing a very muted Democratic advantage, I suspect we're in for a muted Republican one over the next 5 days. So there should be a Republican advantage, but it may not be a big one. And so what does it all mean? Nobody knows. Because in this particular state especially, but in all of the states that were reporting early voting, they tell you the party, like in Nevada.
Yes, right.
All right. But they don't tell you who they're voting for. So within the Democrats, are there Biden-Trump voters?
No.
And especially important in a state like North Carolina, are there Republicans who are Haley-Harris voters?
Ah.
Probably a lot of them.
Yeah.
And then others who are a third of the reported early voters, you have no idea how they're going to vote.
Yes. Not Jill Stein, probably.
Yeah. Now, if you are looking at voter registration statistics,
let's say
for who's voting, only maybe 10. Let's see. About a third, a very important third. Others are 38.9% of the electorate so far. That's a big number. Democrats are 32, and Republicans are like 30.
All right.
So the biggest chunk of voters so far is other. And since you don't know how they're going to vote, the fact that the Democrats have a slight lead doesn't tell you much of anything.
No.
Because you don't know how the others are going to vote. You don't even know how Democrats and Republicans are going to vote, but you don't know how others are going to vote. So that's why looking at a place like North Carolina, you'll have Republicans saying, oh, this is great news for us because in 2020, Democrats had a huge lead. Well, 2020 was a pandemic year, and of course they had a huge lead because they voted all sorts of different ways, including by mail in 2020, that are completely irrelevant to now.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I think a lot of people took care of it early. There's a lot of uncertainty in 2020, and the fact that there were so many available alternative methods and everything being uncertain. Yeah, I don't even know when I'm going outside again. Yeah, I better vote and do it quick.
Right. So just looking at in-person turnout, because in-person is bigger than mail.
In-person early.
Right, in-person early. Or what they call EIP, early in-person.
Oh.
in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Okay. In 2020, Democrats had 35% of the vote. Republicans had 35% of the vote, but the Democrats had a tick more, maybe 30,000 more. And others had 30% of the vote. That's how it finished.
Mm-hmm.
In 2022, it was 37% Democrats, 32% Republicans, 30% other.
All right.
And so that's right now, 2024 is looking like 2020, almost matching it. 35% Democrat, 34% Republican, 31% other. So again, you can't look at this and say one party is doing great compared to how they usually do. First of all, you don't even know what usually is and which year you're supposed to use. And secondly, others are such a big part of this, it just spoils everything. So you cannot look at early voting in North Carolina and make any conclusions whatsoever. Don't.
All right. I mean, all right. That was a lot of time to not even come to a conclusion. But the point was, this is why you can't come to a conclusion.
But the data says you can't come to a conclusion.
That's
it's not
exactly
just, don't look at the data. Right. Just don't decide. No, I'm looking at the data.
Said, don't
That's
look.
Why I can't decide.
Yeah. I don't know. So we don't know the answer. I mean,
but I do know. I do know the answers you don't know.
Right. Well, okay. That's that makes some sense. I get it. I suppose it could have come to the same conclusion and done it in 5 seconds, but it wouldn't have been as scientific.
Well,
we think you should just
let's do Georgia next.
All right.
Georgia is just so interesting. I have 2 Georgia votes pages. One was from the Wayback Machine from 2020, the final.
Oh, is that back? All right.
Although you could you could use the Wayback Machine and find October 17th. They don't have the 18th.
Oh.
And it's similar numbers, but by the end, we know the white vote was 57%, black vote was 28%, and as of now, white vote is 59% and black vote is 28%.
Okay.
We know the female-male ratio now is 55-44. We know then it was 55-43.
Ah.
What I'm telling you is that so far, this year's early vote looks like 2020's early vote.
All right.
Here's where it differs. And this is going to be important when it comes to all of these categories. All right? If you're looking at non-voters, that is to say, people who voted early but never voted before.
Okay. New voters, even.
Well, they're non-voters, They're new voters. They may have voted in some other election, but they didn't vote for the 4-year presidential beforehand.
Okay. Typical non-voters, but who showed up this time anyway.
In 2020, they made up 29% of the final.
All right.
Okay?
Yes.
And right now, they're making up about 15.
Oh.
Why is that? I'll tell you why that is. Thank you for asking.
Yes.
It's because the non-voters tend to be independent and younger.
All right. Yeah. And
so, let's see, on this page, I have to flip back and look at it because they look so similar. This is now, 18 to 29-year-olds are 9% of those who voted so far. But in the old days, it was 14. So independents and young voters vote late. They procrastinate. They don't get around to it until the end. And that means that Harris's numbers will go up as we get closer to the election, even in early vote.
I'm for that.
That's going to be really important when you try to figure out what's going on in Nevada, which we'll do after the break.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We're discussing the early voting turnout among the KITM population itself. Early voting opens. Early voting has been open here in Virginia for a little while, but now you've had to make your way all the way to the county elections board office in order to do it up to this point. But today the satellite opportunities open up closer to population centers. So this week we'll take care of it here. You were just telling me, Greg, early voting for the first time in Connecticut?
They passed a law, and so this will be the first time they do it. But early voting opens with no excuse voting today in Connecticut, so I'll be voting after the show. I could do it now, but then you just hear radio silence.
Yeah, well, yeah, probably true. And I joked that Abby is going to vote, but you say Abby already voted. So
Abby already voted. She's registered at the Dog Star.
And the good news is in Connecticut, a lot of dogs will vote with their feet, and they have 4 of them, so it's a landslide.
Yeah.
Usually it's like stuffing the ballot box.
Voted 4 times and then ate her ballot, right?
and then deposited her ballot in a drop box, down the block.
Yeah, which I'm not even going to touch.
Yeah, well, you had a little plastic
because
bags.
Nobody wants to touch
That's
it
why
now.
you can do it. Okay.
In any case, I do look forward to voting for the first time early.
Yeah.
A second time because the pandemic. Pandemic allowed you to do drop boxes.
Right.
But this is like first time official. And what you actually have to do is you have to walk in to your place of registration and tell them you want a ballot, and they give it to you. You fill out the ballot, you fold it in half, put it in the envelope, you sign it, they verify it, and then you're done. Or at least that's how the process goes.
Interesting, with the whole signing envelopes, etc.
That's how they verify it's you, which is tricky because if your signature has changed for what they have on file, like when you first registered in 1989 to vote, then they may have a problem. But we'll see how that works.
So. And you're a doctor, so who knows what happened to your signature?
Well, that's the thing. My signature was never good, so I'm not worried.
Scribble. Yeah, in Virginia, it's just straight like going to vote normally. You check in, and if you're going to one of the centralized locations, you give them your address, and they look up your precinct, and they print a ballot for you right there off of a laser printer, and you fill it in, and you Scantron it right there. There's no folding, spindling, mutilating, signing, anything. It's interesting. Yep. So, okay, you make your way through it. I guess they sort of felt like, well, we're going to make it special and verifiable in some way, and then probably in a couple of years in Connecticut, they'll say, we could just do it in the normal way. How do you do it normally? Well, do you have machines like old style, or do you do...
Well, the old way is you filled in a piece of paper, and then you bring your piece of paper to the machine and put it in.
Yeah, okay. So, eventually they'll probably get around to saying, well, why can't we just do this early, too? But if they had like the New York State or New Jersey, the machines, where they have to set everything up and people have to go in and pull the curtain closed, I could see why they would want to do it differently. They didn't work
properly, but I loved them when I was a kid.
They were kind of interesting. Yeah. They really made voting a process. And
vote row 3, and you could click row 3, and the entire row 3 would go. You wouldn't have to pick out the individual ones. So you could do the Democratic line with one lever.
Yeah, right. True, and made a satisfying clack, and the curtains.
When the curtains open, it all goes back to, so like when the curtains open, they can't look over and see what you did.
Right. It all snaps back into place. They're all connected.
And when I was a kid, I just thought the whole mechanics of that was just so interesting.
Yeah. It was very imposing machine, and it had a little bit of a Wizard of Oz effect.
Yeah, they broke all the time.
They were manipulable, reportedly as well. So, all right. Well, it was an interesting idea.
My levers didn't leave, I don't know what happened. Well, too late. You can only vote once. Too bad.
Yep.
Bye.
So, they moved on to the computerized stuff and ruined everything.
Right. In any case, we're done with Georgia. About all we're going to talk about there.
Georgia.
And we're done with North Carolina. All we're going to talk about there. So the person, of course, there's 2 people, 1.5 people, to follow for Nevada early vote. John Ralston, of course, is the king. He's the oracle. And, he's got his daily indie blog up. And the problem is that Clark County, which is where all the votes are, is really slow to report. Washoe seems to be a wash. Now, Washoe has about 3% more registered Republicans, but the Democrats have about a 2% lead. When you count early vote, both by mail and early in person. Clark, of course, has a Democratic lead, but it's based on Republicans voting early in person and Democrats doing it by mail. And there's only a couple of days worth of mail-in. So the large firewall that Democrats want to create in Clark hasn't really happened yet. And John Samuelson, the other person to follow, if you're interested in what's going on in Nevada early vote, says, please don't look at any of these numbers and try to draw any conclusions. First of all, just like the other states, we don't know what year to compare it to.
All right.
And secondly, he's the one that makes the really hugely important point that Democrats are depending on others independents,
I see, yeah,
and young people, and they vote late. That's what happened last time. We had a surge of voting at the very end. It was all the Harris voters. It was Biden voters then, Harris voters now. That's what we expect. So it's going to look like the Democrats aren't doing as well because they're probably depending more on others and independents and young people than in previous years, partly because the registration numbers have changed. There's more Republicans than there used to be, and the Democratic lead in registration has been down over the past 4 years. So Nevada is a very difficult state to read. Even Ralston said he's going to have trouble making anything out this year. We really need more data before you can say anything. Right now, the Democrats have a small lead. It's growing every day. And whether it's big enough or not, we don't know. We also don't know from any of these early voting statistics which party is more likely to pull their election day voters into early vote. Looks like the Republicans are doing more of that this year because Trump has given permission structure to vote early.
Yeah.
In previous years, he told them not to. So we don't know if the Republican lead on election day is going to be as overwhelming as it used to be, one of the many variables that we just don't know. So bottom line here is that voting has started. We're tracking the vote. We can't make hide nor hair. Democrats are generally ahead. We don't know what that means. We don't know how much are they supposed to be ahead compared to which year. But none of it looks like we're losing. If Republicans were ahead at this point, we'd be in trouble.
Okay.
That's not the case.
Right.
That's what we know. We don't know anything else besides that.
All right. That's what we're stuck with. Another 2 weeks.
Right.
What else can you do?
Yeah. Well, nothing.
No.
But it's okay. No reason to panic. No reason to worry. Those Washington Post polls are pretty reassuring that not that much has changed. And your whole theory of the race, if it's based on the polls, remember the polling error is going to be one way or the other, and we don't know what it is. And if your theory of the race is that late breakers are for Harris, well, the polls say that that's probably right. And if your theory of the race is that the polls are not picking up young voters, first-time voters, and it's certainly not really helping you all that much to try to figure out where the Haley to Harris voters actually live, well, we're just going to have to wait.
Okay. Yes. Well, we'll hold on and wait.
Right. So that's basically the Monday summary. What else do we have to talk about? Well, there's stuff. This is from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Lancaster Online. F&M.
Oh.
F&M voters.
Yeah, right. Them. Okay. F&Ms.
F&M.
Yeah.
F&M voter organization alleges Lancaster County election staff misled on registration rules. Laura Medvick, college registrar and co-chair of the nonpartisan Votes campaign, said Deputy Elections Clerk Lisa Dart told her students couldn't register till they provided proof of their registration in their home state, that it was canceled. And only after it was canceled could they register in Pennsylvania. That's not true.
No. Yeah, I mean, that's not the case with people who move from state to state. You register when you move into a new state, and it's up to the old state to purge you.
Well, you should, but you don't have to.
Yeah, it's up to your old state
in 1979, SIM, S-Y-M-M, the United States Supreme Court ruling affirms the right of college students to register to vote where they go to school.
Yeah, it's where they're living.
The registrar also questioned the addresses on the students' registration forms, which all use the same physical address at the college. The college said all students use that address because it all goes to the mailroom, and then we figure it out here.
Right. It's like normal.
So they were using that as an excuse not to let them register. So
well,
I'm just, this is the stuff that happens.
Yeah, and it happens in a lot of places where you don't have like big politically sophisticated polling operations that really pay close attention to elections and election rules. And luckily it happened at F&M. There are informed advocates who can speak up and say, no, that's, as you would say,
That's bullshit.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Uh-huh.
DJ Dion has a column today in regard to the Orange Vulgarian. Okay. Kamala Harris as an indispensable ally as she closes her presidential campaign. She plays messages from him nearly everywhere she goes. His name is Donald Trump. Harris is making sure voters hear his unhinged, truly bizarre, and very scary words.
Yes.
And she's making, him being an authoritarian and a fascist, like part and parcel of what's going on here.
Well, good. She ought to. It's very scary and worrisome.
Right. Dan Balls tries to summarize what's going on here. He says, Pennsylvania road trip finds voters full of doubt, anger, and unease.
Yes.
To voters of Pennsylvania, Trump's a known quantity. For better or for worse, Harris is less known. If Trump wins Pennsylvania, it'll be because some of his potential supporters see him as deeply flawed, but they're more concerned about immigration, inflation, and the negative perceptions of Harris. If Harris wins, it'll be because she's fully mobilized suburban women, prevented too many younger voters, particularly black men, from staying home, and rallied those who see a second Trump term as potentially destructive to the future of the country. That's why her closing argument is going to be, Trump is really bad, let me explain why.
Okay.
And I like our chances.
Yeah. And you don't really have to do a whole lot of explaining, but it's good. Yeah, it's nice to highlight just exactly how awful he is, and sometimes in his own words, there's no denying it when you see it. If you're at the rally when you see it, you're kind of already sold, but the point is that they put it on the news.
Right. So, now, when you see that you're looking at early voting, pick a state like North Carolina, for example, and you see Democrats and Republicans are even with the Democrats with a slight lead and then others a big chunk of it.
Yes.
You can understand why, or if you think about Haley to Harris voters, you can understand why Harris is concentrating on the center-right, I'm uncomfortable with Trump voters.
Yes.
So using that as a ending argument really makes a whole lot of sense. And here's an example of how it might work. I mean, when I say work, I mean you're getting the result you want. This is from the Dayton Daily News.
Yes.
All right. If I told you that there was a guy named Robert Taft,
yes,
what party would you think he was from?
I would think he was from the Republican Party.
Yeah.
And he lived in Ohio. Yeah. Right.
As a matter of fact, Robert Taft is a fairly famous name in Republican politics.
Yeah.
Right? The older Taft used to be known as Mr. Republican. William Howard Taft used to be a president.
Right. Round, as I recall.
A round one.
Yeah.
A very round president.
Well, he really sat around the White House, as they said.
Yes. When he sat around the White House, he was round. So, he's
a good guy.
That's why it's interesting that former Ohio Governor Bob Taft endorsed Sherrod Brown today.
Oh, all right.
Ohio Senate.
Good. That's terrific. Sherrod Brown accepting the endorsement. Thank you very much. He's got that raspy voice. Very,
Robert
cool,
Taft is not only a Republican, he's the only person who had beaten Sherrod Brown in a political race.
Oh.
1990 campaign for Ohio Secretary of State.
Huh.
And,
all right, interesting.
And Sherrod Brown said, he's the only guy who ever beat me, and I more than welcome his support.
Sure. All right. That's pretty good. I mean, it's more than just Donald Trump that sensible Republicans are worried about handing power over to it. It's worrisome to mainline
the used car
Republicans.
Salesman Bernie Moreno is just awful.
That's exactly it. Like, again, they've nominated a whole slate of what was the name of the guy? The legitimate rape guy that ruined his own candidacy, and now they've just had a whole slate of
Akers from all the others.
There, Todd. That's it, Todd. Something. Is it Akers? Was that
Akers?
Yeah. But between him and Roy Moore and Mastriano and it's just that in North Carolina, Robinson, it's crazy what they're doing to them. And the good news is that it's dismaying Mitch McConnell horribly.
Oh, by the way, speaking of voting, I failed to mention when we were talking about North Carolina, there's a good news story here, not for any one party.
All right.
You may recall, western North Carolina was hit by a major hurricane.
Yes, I do.
Severe flooding.
That was an interesting story. Yeah.
Lots of stuff going on.
Right.
Michael Bitzer, Bowtie Politics, who follows this stuff very closely and one of the great follows, published a county-by-county who's voting map. Oh. Early in-person ballots, EIP ballots accepted.
EIP, yeah. Okay.
As a percentage of 2020's total cast.
Oh, okay.
And if you look at the western part of North Carolina,
yeah,
they're doing just as well as the rest of the state. Somehow or other, despite the devastation, their election people have gotten their acts together and gotten everybody a way to vote.
That's pretty good. You know, I wonder how frequently it occurs to me that emergency shelters are probably just coincidental, not really coincidentally. But
they should make them voting places.
I think they probably are in most cases. I mean, you're really talking about the same buildings very frequently being used. And if they weren't destroyed, and they're usually pretty sturdy places if they're going to be emergency centers, that's pretty wise. I mean, I guess if it's destroyed, you're really in trouble. But looks like it's working out pretty good there. And if you just have to be on the correct side of the washed out road, I guess. Or I suppose you could tie your ballot to a rock and throw it over the chasm to the other side. But yeah, doing well, recovering, and hopefully making ballots available to people as they're making their way around, supplying them with water and other necessities if they're still cut off. So
I'm sending you a
comprehensive
2020
response.
Interactive map of North Carolina so you can compare and see county by county.
This picture.
All right.
Trump.
And Little Polk County, which is a Trump place. I mean, they've only got like 11,000 total votes. And they went Trump 62-36.
Yeah.
But they're in western North Carolina, and they actually lead the state in number of ballots returned. People are probably staying all at that one shelter.
Yeah, that may be it. Right. Or it's the truck fixing place or something. I don't know. But
41% return already.
And that is 41% of the 2020
total
numbers.
Yeah.
Okay.
So very impressive. So good for Western North Carolina, whether you're Republican or Democrat. If you're a poll worker, if you're a registrar, you're doing your job. It's a wonderful thing. Mm-hmm. People should vote.
Okay. By the end, I imagine, it being such a Trumpy place, there's going to be probably 600 or 700% of the ballots being returned.
Could be.
You know, they love that but they're only doing it because we're doing it. As you know, everything it's really our fault.
Right.
Okay. Good job, Polk County. I don't know how many people are there, but the people are getting their ballots in. So that's
total 11,000 voters anyway. I don't know how many people.
Right.
I don't care about people. I care about how many votes.
Right. Exactly. You know,
people. What are people?
We don't. Yeah. All right. Well, they're doing a good job there, and I don't know what the damage was like.
They really need to be credited for that, and so I am.
All right. Well done, Polk.
Right, and that's about it. That's all I have,
okay.
Really. Right now we're in a waiting game. We're just trying to collect things. We would expect a whole bunch of new polls this week from some high-quality pollsters. I expect they're not really going to help us very much. Some will be up, some will be down. They're all going to be
high
close,
quality, but not helpful.
They're not going to tell us anything. We already know that. And so there you have it.
All right. Well, we'll have to hold out and wait. How would you like to be working like this, working your fingers to the bone as one of the high-quality pollsters, only to find out, you know, this is the big week. You're going to do all your greatest polls, but we're already. You can't tell us anything.
Yeah, whatever.
What are we going to do with it?
Thank you very much. Yeah, whatever.
Right. We are only 2 weeks away. We could just wait.
Yeah. We could.
All right. Well, let's begin the waiting process, I guess. And, did you, we forgot one thing about Pennsylvania is,
what's that?
Elon Musk is giving everybody in Pennsylvania $1 million.
Oh, that's
it turns
nice.
out. Over the weekend, he started a petition process. This is it's very odd and it won't do anything. And the reason is, I think he's trying to avoid breaking the law horribly.
I mean, it's unethical, but probably not illegal, but who knows?
Yeah, we can cover that.
I don't know that he'd be convicted, and there's not enough time to do any of that.
But, well, I can talk about it a little bit later, but yeah, I see he upped his ante. First, he was telling everybody, I guess because Trump was trying to be elected the 47th president, he was giving everybody who signed his weird petition, which ended up being, I think it was supposed to be a pledge to vote for Donald Trump, and then the lawyers said, no, you can't do that. So now it's sign my petition that says that you support the First and Second Amendments. and probably, really like Donald Trump or whatever. And then and it doesn't even matter. And he said, in order to comply sort of maybe with the law, it doesn't even matter who you vote for, because I can't control that, but we're having signing parties at Trump rallies. So that'll help sort things out. But if you sign, I'll give you $47. And I don't know whether that wasn't moving enough people or he just needed to make more headlines. So he said, I'm upping it to $100. Okay. And then he said, and every day between now and Election Day, I'm going to pick a name at random from the signers and give that person $1 million. No, all right. Now people were like, now you're talking. And he did he did a thing where he had an announcement at a appearance at a rally and claimed that a person had won the $1 million and brought a person up who said, that's my name, and gave them one of those big novelty checks. I don't know whether that's the same thing as actually giving somebody $1 million or not, but he did pull that stunt. I don't know if he did it a second day. I don't know anything. I don't know whether the papers vetted this guy, found out he's a Tesla employee, and, Musk said, give me the $1 million back or I'll have you killed. I don't know, but it appears to be a thing. It was an interesting thing to do and an interesting observation somebody made, by the way, just in case you weren't mad enough about these, multi billionaires, that someone made the observation. The most disturbing thing about this is that there's an amount of money that makes a huge, huge, huge difference in people's lives, and he plays with it, and it's really funny to dangle it out there and make regular people dance for a big check.
Right. Hey, speaking of big checks.
Yeah.
This is out this morning. The Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, they lean right, don't they?
It sounds like it, you would think.
Trump proposals,
everyone knows I hate responsible
Trump proposals
budgets.
Could drain Social Security in 6 years, Budget Group says.
Oh.
So if you're thinking about, well, I don't like Trump, but I don't know about Harris's policies. Well, let me tell you about Trump policies. If you didn't get swayed by Project 2025, they're going to drain Social Security if he's elected.
Yeah.
Okay. What else do you need to know? Well, I don't know. I'm not comfortable about it. But you don't like Trump. You already told us you don't like Trump. But I need to get comfortable with it. Why do you need to get comfortable with Harris? Just vote for her.
She's not going to drain your
get
Social
comfortable
Security?
with her over the next 4 years.
Yeah. That's true. You got time. Whereas, I'm not sure. Suppose you get comfortable with Donald Trump. I don't know that you're going to be comfortable with him for all that long, not only because he might insult you at some point, but because he's not a young man. If you want to be in on getting comfortable with someone for 4 years, the better bet is a younger, healthier person.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
PRRI has a poll out. Republicans are far more likely than Democrats to support their candidate assuming office by force after an election loss.
Why do you ask that question?
Nearly 1 in 5 Republicans, actually. Including 23% of Republicans who hold a favorable view of Trump, say if Trump loses the election, he should declare the results invalid and just take power.
That is a remark. I mean,
12% of Democrats say Harris should do the same.
Well, I mean, I guess if you're going to ask the question, people are going to say that.
Yeah, they didn't ask about whether the moon is made of green cheese or how many people believe in angels, but,
right.
Interesting anyway.
I mean, also, if you could defeat a candidate by throwing a bucket of water on them and melting them, what would you do? Well, I would throw a bucket of water on Donald Trump. Thank you for asking. That is interesting.
Right. The way I look at it is,
look,
80% of Republicans are willing to accept that Trump lost.
Yeah. That's true.
But then again, I'm a half glass full person.
That is a remarkably, refreshingly optimistic way of putting it, but
and
it is valid.
90% of Democrats say the same.
You are valid. That is true, too. And, that
same
is
number.
That's amazing.
But it sounds better.
What an interesting thing to even decide to poll. It's the sort of thing I imagine they had some debate about. Should we ask people this? This is maybe not a great idea. But on the other hand, I think we're going to discover numbers that should shock and dismay people.
Right, but you're not paying attention, so, what's the point?
Oh. I don't know, man.
Right, I can never forget that undecided voter who decided he's probably not voting for Trump because he wasn't competent enough to hide the hush money payment to Stormy Daniels.
People have their reasons.
Yeah, people have reasons with capital R.
Yeah.
And so, whatever.
How interesting. Okay. Well, we'll try it again. Let's say, I don't know, are you free Wednesday?
Yeah.
Okay. That'll be a good day. I'll pencil you in
It'll
for
cost
that.
$1 million.
I may get some between now and then. Oh, you have to be registered in Pennsylvania. There was that restriction.
Yeah. Well, I have to tell you two things, though.
There may still be time. Yes.
UConn beat UConn for the women's NBA championship.
Oh, yes.
New York Liberty won.
Okay.
That would be Breanna Stewart.
Okay. All right.
And she beat the Lynx, which would be Nafisha Collins. Both UConn grads, both stars.
I would imagine there's a UConn grad on almost every one of these teams.
You'd think. And so this is a wonderful thing. So very happy with that. And, of course, my late parents, would be celebrating because the Yankees and Dodgers will be playing in the World Series.
Yeah, it's been a while since they.
In the 50s, that happened all the time.
Yes.
And I mean all the time, except for the occasional time that the Yankees played the Giants.
True. So the originally old Subway Series things, but even through the 70s and early 80s,
they've done a lot.
Dodgers was
so
a big deal.
There's a big media markets, and so the media people are happy, and Boston Red Sox fans aren't particularly happy. Everybody loves to hate the Yankees, but Aaron Judge, who's like fantastic, and Ohtani in the same series from LA. It's just fantastic. So looking forward to it.
It's going to be exciting. Donald Trump will maybe want to check out the showers possibly in the middle of the whole thing and report on what he's seeing, and that keeps sport interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, so that's it.
Very good. We're about 20 seconds from the music. If you want to, hang out and dance on your way out, that's fine. We'll be back after.
I sent you a video of Trump driving a truck. So maybe I'll do that.
Okay. Yeah. I'll have a minute to set it. Is this the old one when they parked it on the White House?
Yes.
Yeah. It's always one of the favorites.
You couldn't tell whether he was dancing or driving.
And screaming like maybe horn noise. I don't remember what he was screaming
point
about.
Is, he does cosplay.
Yeah.
Just like when he was president.
McDonald's, presidency, and truck driving as well.
Yeah. Same thing.
Okay.
You pretend to do these things.
And by the way, that North Carolina map that you sent me from the 2020 election, they have him as the winner there. The very Frankenstein square head picture of him. His hair's getting weirder and weirder.
Yeah, BBI's in flat top from the old Dick Tracy.
Right, exactly. All right, we'll be back in a minute. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's jump back to Pocket, where I have parked the competing articles, I think, about the Elon Musk idea and his giveaway time, and a few more things as well. But I think I've seen a couple people posit that it is absolutely, positively, 100% against the law, what he's doing, and others saying, I'm not so sure that he hasn't designed things in an ambiguous enough way that a very, very rich person's lawyers couldn't get away with this thing. So we'll see. I mean, usually if that's the contest, a very, very rich person will get away with such a thing. But I think that it's possible. There's a lot of speculation about it and how it was designed. And as I said, because it's a petition in which you don't pledge to do anything in particular, it's the sort of thing that, this is a very weird development in this sense. All right, so I think what he's done is you sign a petition, you have to be a registered voter in Pennsylvania, and it's okay if you're a new registrant, whatever. It may even be that it's better if you're a new registrant. I don't know, but I think you have to be registered in Pennsylvania. You sign a petition that says, and it's not even necessarily a petition, and all it is a data gathering thing. And really, honestly, if you're turning your personal information, your data over to Elon Musk or Donald Trump, you're probably in trouble. You're in danger at this point. But he doesn't demand that you pledge to vote for Donald Trump. He doesn't demand that you be a registered Republican. He doesn't demand anything other than you be registered in Pennsylvania, sign a petition saying you support the First and Second Amendment. And, I mean, everybody I know, minus Armando, is eligible to do that if he were registered in Pennsylvania. But, of course, he is openly in defiance of the necessity of the Second Amendment anyway. But, But for these purposes, he could probably still sign this thing. And then I don't know what it means, how mechanically I guess you sign the thing and you give your address as well, and he purports to be sending you the $100 check. I don't know whether he took any action when it was $47 and then had to go back and send people another $53, or whether he didn't really get around to it the first time, and so now he's just sending everybody $100, or whether the whole thing was crap, and he's not sending anybody anything. Then he upped it to, and there'll be a sweepstakes from among the people who sign this thing. We'll choose somebody at random and give them $1 million, maybe, sort of. So, I don't even know whether I put articles aside that argue that this is okay, but I did see people saying, because he's not demanding that anybody pledge to vote in any way, it might squeak by. But on the other hand, there were at least a couple of claims over the weekend from people who, have reason to know that this was legally a problem. For instance, let's see, I guess we have screenshots from Twitter being carried over to Blue Sky, which is one of the few ways I see what goes on Twitter anymore. Anyway, Rick Hazen, who is a election law guy, and so, and a legal person, a legal analyst and law school professor, we quote him all the time, there's reason to listen when he says this. He's picked up Hugo Lowell's tweet here. Hugo Lowell, again, this is screenshot, so I'm not linking back to Twitter. Not sure entirely who everyone is, but this strikes me as a journalist's tweet. New, Elon Musk says on stage at a town hall that America PAC, the vehicle he'll be using for this thing, will be awarding $1 million every day until the election to a registered Pennsylvania voter who has signed his petition. And Rick Hazen noting at this point, making $1 million prize contingent on registering to vote is illegal, which is interesting too. I mean, it sort of seems like, and the reason it's on the books, I don't know why, exactly what the reasoning was, why it's a bad idea generally, but I'm sure that at some point they said, all right, well, for whatever reason, we don't want to do this, which is weird. You can see why somebody might try to do it, even from a nonpartisan standpoint. Being registered to vote is very important. We should encourage people to register to vote. What if there was $1 million prize, a sweepstakes available, and you register to vote and you would become eligible? What seems you could see how a nonpartisan person might view this as it's just a harmless effort to try to encourage registration to vote. Why is that bad? I don't really know what the reasoning behind it was, but they may have questioned whether or not it was really and truly a nonpartisan effort. But also perhaps, we don't have, I don't know. I'm not certain what the argument was about it, but apparently it ended in the adoption of 52 U.S. Code Section 10307C, along with a citation and a link to the citation, pointing out that it is, in fact, illegal to make a sweepstakes prize contingent on registering to vote. Also, with Pennsylvania registration soon closing for this election, it may not accomplish much of what Musk wants done. with the sweepstakes. But then he goes on, Rick Hazen says, to note that the DOJ Election Crimes Manual specifically mentions lotteries for voters as prohibited vote buying under that statute. And I guess that's it. It's close enough to vote buying, even though it isn't outright vote buying. It's registration buying. But at any rate, you get the idea that it is frowned upon to the extent that there is apparently an applicable statute. DOJ Election Crimes Manual specifically mentions lotteries for voters as prohibited under vote buying under that statute, with a link again to a site, but this. Yeah, I'd have to go to the Twitter entry in order to get that, but with a page reference and everything. So, Rick Hazen, he's kind of, usually knows what he's talking about on such things, and it's let's say, interesting to see that this accusation might be leveled. But then again, I did see plenty of other people saying, I don't know, it's very ambiguous the way he has structured this thing. And now it's not that you are getting the prize for registering to vote or being eligible for the prize by registering to vote, although it is that might not escape the clause because you have to be registered in order to be eligible for the prize. But the list is of people who have signed a petition, not people who have become registered to vote either previously or because of. And the fact that, previously registered, not Republicans, but previously registered voters would still be eligible, but they're only eligible if they signed a petition, but the petition isn't show me that you've registered, it's tell me that you support part of the Constitution. Sure, great, no problem. So, I don't know. We'll see. And then, of course, we don't really have, equal application of justice on things like this in this country. We just don't. And he's fully willing to, and like this whole thing may work for him because the law is, of course, designed to prevent people from bribing people to register or to vote. And if you remove the registration or the voting far enough from the incentive, then ordinarily it's the sort of thing that no one really wants to put money into incentivizing. If I can't directly incentivize the voting or even the registration, then I don't really want to be a part of it. Who has money to burn on paying people $100 to sign a petition that doesn't mean anything, that they pledged their interest in supporting something that is so, otherwise anodyne? I mean, the first and second, it's a loaded pairings, I guess, a pairing of amendments, particularly including the Second Amendment, but even there, generally speaking, well, I don't know. I mean, I value the interest in the Second Amendment that is expressed here. We have lots of problems with the way it's been interpreted, but do you support amendments, the first two amendments to the Constitution? Sure. Why not? I mean, it doesn't really commit you to anything in particular, though the Second Amendment, like we say, gets bandied about as a loaded term, no pun intended. But ordinarily, nobody would say, all right, well, I got to steer clear of making the prize contingent on even registration to vote, much less a pledge to vote for one candidate or another. So it's really not worth anything to me. But as a publicity stunt, basically what he's doing here, I guess, is saying, I'm not allowed to pay you for registering, and I'm not allowed to pay you for voting, and I'm not allowed to offer you a place in a lottery in exchange for your registration. But wink, 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 that's kind of what I'm doing. But instead, formally speaking, I'm paying you for signing a petition, which I don't even know if that's illegal. I mean, I guess it kind of should be, but it's not even a petition to put someone on the ballot or support some position which is up for question. publicly or otherwise. I'm just simply saying, do you feel like you could sign a petition that says you're in support of a certain part of the Constitution we've all kind of, agreed is our governing document? Yeah. I mean, it is kind of harmless in that sense, except it's, a big cover for a big, wink and nod campaign that really, you don't have to come to the Trump rally to do it, but we're giving away the money at the Trump rally. There's a very close association with Trump as a candidate. That's troublesome. But if it's far enough removed that there's no real practical effect that's being bought here, then maybe it's okay. It's self-limiting normally, because no normal person would pay $100 to, do this thing, which is 10 steps removed from actually producing the outcome we're looking for, which is votes for Trump. But somebody sitting on a pile of hundreds of billions of dollars would be willing to waste that money. And that was one of the observations that struck me, that somebody was pointing out that, here it is. It's Helena Fitzgerald, who you will find on Blue Sky as Hella Fitzgerald, Hella, like, Hella, whatever, California slang, right? Hella Fitzgerald at bluesky.social, who says, what makes me incandescently angry about Musk's cash for votes thing, let's say, that's not the word that gets used, is that it demonstrates that he does in fact understand how desperate the vast majority of people are for amounts of money that are infinitesimally tiny to him. And he thinks it's funny. And it is kind of annoying and will make you a little bit angry, realizing that that's the case, that he's basically entertaining himself by making people dance for the chance at winning $1 million. Now, again, there was a thing, an announcement made and a novelty check handed out, and a lot of the news outlets initially covering it didn't even give you the name of the person who won, which I thought was kind of interesting. Like, isn't that sort of a basic element to your reporting? But I had to look around. It's not a hidden secret or anything. It's just, it was odd that it took me 5 or 6 tries to find a newspaper article that would name the person so that you could then start to check. I wouldn't put it past Elon Musk to arrange it such that the money was being given to somebody who he controlled, who would kick it back to him. But at the same time, it wouldn't surprise me greatly if that wasn't the case either, because it's insignificant. It's literally insignificant. That's the point that Helena was making here, is that it means nothing to just burn $1 million a day for 17 days just to prove to people that, you won't catch me trying to engineer this as a kickback. Donald Trump, you would catch him trying to engineer it as a kickback. He doesn't have that kind of, as much money as he claims to have and control, he's not going to give it away. But Elon Musk is happy to, screw with people and burn $17 million just for the satisfaction of watching people try and fact check whether or not he's really doing it, and having to admit at the end, yep, he burned $17 million just to troll you and waste your time. And maybe we shouldn't have that in America. That's kind of an interesting proposition all by itself. Is this something we should allow to happen? And also interesting in speaking of billionaires coming to Trump's rescue, as we read the other day that he has structured his campaign such that there are only 11 people on the actual campaign payroll, and has outsourced the operations of the rest of the campaign to super PACs with which you're not supposed to be able to coordinate. So normally that wouldn't work, except he's just saying, to hell with it, let's coordinate and do it. And, if I win, I'll pardon myself of the crimes of having coordinated with you. Maybe I'll pardon you too. If I lose, what's the difference? I'll be charged with campaign finance violations. Big whoop. They'll fine me. I won't pay. I'll drag it out. I will die before, they eventually are able to arm wrestle wrest the money from my hands. They'll have to pry it from my cold, dead hands. They may even have to, I might still be alive, but let them pry it one way or the other. I don't really care about the long arm of the law. It doesn't interest or worry me in any way. So not only is it illegal coordination going on with super PACs, but the super PACs are almost entirely funded, in some cases by a single billionaire, depending, and Elon Musk has multiples of these things. Just as he's willing to burn $17 million on a stunt, he's willing to burn $100 million on funding a super PAC that will just do things his way and arrange with the Trump campaign. I'll take care of get out the vote operations. And that, too, another big story from over the weekend, that apparently he is doing that. He is paying people to go do the GOTV door knocking, and they are, in fact, just like with the petition, realizing, I get paid either way. It doesn't matter to him. He's got money to burn. So the GOTV operatives are faking their numbers, apparently, and saying that they're knocking on 25% more doors than they actually are and collecting the money. And he's realizing this, and he's now, burning another $20 million with a parallel operation to check up on whether or not the first operation is being duped. So, I'm happy to see more of his money being burned, but again, he's just got so much that it literally doesn't matter how much is being burned. He'll still have more than you'll ever dream of having in your lifetime, and it won't make a difference to him. But he's not the only billionaire doing that. And there's a lot of great coverage out there over the about the network of several billionaires, and very often Silicon Valley billionaires, who are doing this and why. But they're not all necessarily Silicon Valley billionaires. For instance, here we have the Blue Sky notice here from. All right, well, what's the D for? I don't know. Do I remember? I have a feeling that from Twitter days that it was Dan, your first name, but all we have here is a first initial D now. I'm sorry about not knowing how to say your name, but former journalist and now communications and policy person for all the good things, racial, social, and economic justice. Is it Dan, though? I think so. Dan Lavoie, Lavoie, and forgive me for never having to have pronounced it out loud, but a follower on Blue Sky, and certainly somebody whose name I remember seeing all over Twitter as well. Glad to see him here on Blue Sky, and saying, reading these stories together, we're crediting you for a thing here. I'm putting it in the roundup. Reading these stories together, you realize that a single reclusive conservative billionaire has compensated for the entire difference in Kamala and Trump's fundraising with a single $150 million check, right? You've been reading stories about the fundraising gap and that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have raised so much more than Donald Trump this time around. And it's within the power of individual billionaires to simply say, I'll close that gap myself. Here are two screen caps from Theodore, is it Schleifer or Schliefer? I don't know. Schleifer. Looks like, is he one of the New York Times campaign beat reporters filing constant updates all the time? Is what it looks like. We have, first, Kamala Harris's campaign both outraised and outspent Donald Trump's campaign by about 3.5 to 1 margin in September. According to new filings on Sunday night, Harris raised $221.8 million compared with Trump's $62.7 million. She outspent Trump by the same proportion, $269.8 million versus $77.6 million. Entering October, Harris had a narrower cash-on-hand advantage by about a 1.5 to 1 margin, $187.5 million versus $119.7 million. And then a later update from Theodore Schleifer, who notes that Timothy Mellon the reclusive billionaire megadonor who has put a staggering amount of money into pro-Trump efforts, continues to stagger us and maybe stagger himself. That would be great if he was spending himself into bankruptcy this way, but apparently not. One of Donald Trump's main super PACs, MAGA Incorporated. Did you know there was such a super PAC? Just disclosed that it received $25 million more from Mellon last month. Remember, you can do anything. You're a Mellon, right? $25 million more last month, making the total that he has donated to the group $150 million. Now, others pointed out that, well, you're saying here, it's true, Dan. You point out that reading the stories together, you realize that a single reclusive conservative billionaire has compensated for the entire difference. Well, not the entire difference. The guy has made up several months of, he's over several months, he's covered the difference for 1 month. We just said that the $150 gap was the September fundraising. All right, but there's also an October gap, and there'll be a small November gap, and there was an August gap as well. But the September gap is mostly closed if you combine the contributions that Timothy Mellon made over the span of several months. True, but there's really no, getting around the fact that the guy has given $150 million to Trump. That is a significant thing. And I don't know, I had a political science moment about that one, and you don't read this the wrong way, and I guess you won't because I'll be able to explain it to you here. But yeah, one of the, it's true that it is, as I had written on Blue Sky, easy and convenient and fast to be able to raise money like this from a single source versus a diffuse and more grassroots effort, a bigger base, gathering it in tens and twenties and $100 donations and putting it together and outraising your opponent that way. It would be much easier if you could just say, one billionaire cut me the $150 billion check. But of course, there's the issue of you're being beholden to that person. But Donald Trump is very polished at stabbing people in the back and throwing them under the bus as well. So there is that. But in addition, one of the flip side, but purely from a political science perspective, if you have a single point source like that, well, I can raise it in an instant, which is great. And I can even argue that I can withstand the pressure to consider myself beholden to that person for whatever reason. There is a flip side to raising all your money from one place like that and depending on it coming in that way. And that is that single point source is subject, let's say, to elimination and being written out of the equation in a way that a broad base is not. Now, that could mean any number of things. A single wacky billionaire can very easily just change their mind. You think you're heading into late October with this guy's donation in your back pocket, ready to roll, and the guy just changed his mind. The guy croaks. The guy, is sued into oblivion, either by the rest of his family to make them stop. They seize power of attorney from him, what have you. Or, as I was saying, just as a purely, ancient political science, just as, voting in this country, we say that a majority rule, it's not the case in presidential voting because of the Electoral College, but that a majority rules in all things. Even, I guess you could even argue that that's the case in the Electoral College. You have to win a majority of the Electoral College in order to win. Why do we say, though, the majority wins? What is the principle behind it? I mean, it seems to go without saying. Well, of course, there's more people on the side. And is it that, the people, the granting the wishes of the majority, the most people get the most utility out of it. You could have the utilitarian argument that, you maximize utility by giving the majority their wish. But it seems like that's kind of an unsatisfactory answer. My theory has always been, well, it's a good substitute for handling things by force, right? It used to be the case that if you wanted to settle any question like that, voting didn't enter into it. It wasn't a matter of voting. It was, well, who can win this battle and force the other side to do what they want to do. And as a good proxy for mustering all your troops and having a battle, a good proxy for having the battle is like that scene, I don't know how historically accurate it is, but that scene out of Braveheart, which came to mind, that you muster all your troops on the battlefield and simply say, well, who looks like they have the majority here? Why is that of interest if you're willing to stab one another and cut each other's heads off in order to settle the question? Well, it's of interest because you can look at it and say, well, that person, it looks like the other side has, a significantly more troops than we do. My surmise is that we will lose this battle just on the numbers alone. Yes, you can win a battle with fewer people on your side, but you got to spend a lot of blood in order to find out whether it's true, and there's a pretty good chance it might not be. But if you muster on the field there and say, that guy's got twice as many troops, let's just come to a political settlement. Everybody go back home, and we'll come to a political settlement. But even better than that, a proxy for even doing that would be balloting at first. You say you can raise twice as many people in support as I can. And it looks like you can. Nobody has to die. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. So we were explaining ourselves here that a good proxy for actually killing one another on the battlefield would be to muster your troops on either side and take a look at who has the most troops and just decide, well, the odds are that the side with the most troops comes out the winner here. Absent some amazing technology or just highly skilled troops and trained troops versus raw recruits ripped from the farms, whatever. But basically, assuming similar technology, similar training, you assemble people on the field and you can tell that the side with more troops likely to win. And then you could refine that into what if we didn't tear people away from their farms and cut into all of our agricultural production just to stage them there and not have them fight? What if instead we said, well, how many troops can this person raise? How many troops can that person raise? Let's substitute the people with some sort of marker. Let's say, a ballot or a slip of paper with the person's name on it. And they're not actually expressing a preference. They're just acknowledging that they're there at the command of their landlord. And you compare the two and see who should win, who has a majority in their corner, right? You have some sort of proxy. It's a big time and energy and money savings, and you don't spill blood on top of it, and that's terrific. So why not do things that way? Well, I don't know. So on that basis, right, on the basis where things are decided by shows of force, going back to, prior to this, where you have the more refined and dignified manner of settling disputes by counting. You actually do battle. You actually do force the other side to try to knuckle under to your view of that. That was the way politics worked for a very long time. Right. So, getting back to the idea of donations, if a single person is the one doing the funding of all this, it makes it for a very powerful person. Might even have been a liege lord in the olden days in their own right. And it was difficult to take them out and get rid of them. That's certainly the case. But, they could occasionally be gotten rid of. And, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to take the person out, life and limb, in order to stop them from donating. There are, like I said, a number of reasons why they might stop donating all by themselves. But yes, that's the flip side of these things. We get away from these things and we lose sight of how easy it might have been in another day and time to take that one donor out of the picture, because we don't like to discuss the dirty parts of what underlies our political system. But, there's a real disadvantage built into the system of being able to wipe out one person's, an entire funding of a campaign by taking out one person. Whereas it's difficult to take out the entire donor base of the Democratic Party, because there's lots of them. Now, that's not to say that Donald Trump won't threaten to do that, and that in a authoritarian fascist dictatorship they might not even try to do something like that. But it's a little easier to do on the flip side, and it's supposed to prevent that from happening. And of course it would normally it does anger a lot of people to see people who are single point billionaires being able to manipulate the entirety of Americans' electoral politics this way. And who knows how they will react. At a minimum, you could use another one of the refined proxies that we have in this country to avoid pure power politics and bloodshed. You could make it illegal and really strongly enforce the point that it is illegal to do this. Of course, we did do that at one point, and then we decided that maybe it wouldn't be so dangerous after all, or the conservatives on the Supreme Court didn't think it was going to be dangerous anyway, and ended up loosening the rules. We used to have a pretty stringent system of control, while it was in tension perhaps with free speech rights and political speech rights and First Amendment rights, and Republicans argued that money was speech, et cetera, and they thought they might experiment with loosening the rules. I think it's becoming fairly clear to anybody who cares that this is getting out of control, and there might be a swing in the pendulum back towards more control. There won't be, of course, as long as the people who have that kind of money can use it to petition the government for the grievance that, hey, I'm not allowed to control things as closely as I used to be able to under the rules that said I could give $150 million to a presidential candidate. And that will mean something, but on the other hand, like somebody else had pointed out, in this conversation that Dan Lavoie had begun here, Craig Gostin mentioning, money is speech, as they say. So there's never been a clearer example of the anti-democratic train having long since left the station. Kamala's hundreds of thousands of voices equal the voice of one billionaire now. And as money is speech measurements go, I guess it's roughly equal. But there are other metrics by which you could measure it. If each of the voices, for instance, represented themselves on the battlefield, or each voice was a pitchfork, thousands of voices would drown out the one voice. And, there's only the one pitchfork plus however many mercenaries the guy can raise. And if you're raising more people on the field than he raises mercenaries, and I guess absent the technological advantage of the AR-15 over the pitchfork, maybe he decides it's better to hide in his panic room than try to influence the campaign. And maybe the mercenaries say it's better for us to seize the goods being stored in the panic room in a post-apocalyptic world rather than maintain the guy inside, since cash is no longer of particular interest to us. You can paint yourself into a real corner this way. Anyway, just putting it out there. Something to think about. All right, now back to some of the other stories that feed into all of this. Let's see. There are a number of interesting stories from over the weekend. One, I guess, a clarification on some of the fakery in the campaign being financed by Elon Musk. I mentioned to you there was the fake campaign platform type site, right, in order to exploit all the confusion that Republicans are trying to sow about Project 2025 and what it is. There was Josh Marshall chiming in on Elon Musk's fake sites and fake texts as well, impersonating the Harris campaign. Not only were they faking a website, they called the Progress 2028 plan, which was a fake agenda for the Kamala Harris campaign. And then if you pointed out that it was fake, they would say, well, I know. What is it? How come you get to disavow Project or Progress 2028 and you don't allow Donald Trump to disavow Project 2025? Well, because he actually was interested in that and accepts it as his platform until he's caught, at which point he denies that he has anything to do with it, even though his people from his previous administration and who are angling to be as part of his second administration are the ones who wrote it, whereas nobody involved with the Harris campaign had anything to do with this thing. You created it. But yeah, I guess once you've undermined all trust in everything, I guess if you're a LOL, YOLO, nothing matters person, I guess you could see them as equivalent. But there are a couple of other activities that were not mentioned previously, which are of some interest here. For instance, the one that starts his write-up. There's deeply cynical, and then there's things which might be illegal, but, you won't find out for years anyway, whether or not it's really true, and there might be pardons to come into play in the meantime. In the first category, though, we have an Elon Musk-funded PAC micro-targeting Jewish and Arab communities with diametrically opposed ads about Kamala Harris's support for Israel or Palestine. Amazingly cynical. And if that doesn't quite make sense to you right off the bat, what they're doing essentially is in zip code tracts that are heavily Arab and Muslim in and around Detroit area, one of the real focal points of organization, how shall we say it, reluctance to come out and support of Kamala Harris, with whom they might otherwise agree on policy issues outside of Middle Eastern politics and Israel-Palestine politics. But where we're talking about Palestinian populations or similarly situated Arab, Muslim, and perhaps therefore sympathetic to the Palestinian cause, where that's a huge issue, and it is in a lot of places, they are essentially micro-targeting people with advertisements that say, oh yeah, well, Kamala Harris stands with Israel, so if that's your single issue or your single biggest issue, you obviously can't come out for her, stay home or do something else. Meanwhile, in heavily Jewish precincts in other states, and in particular, I think Pennsylvania was mentioned here, Philadelphia suburbs, they simply just do the opposite, and they micro-target people with things that say Kamala Harris stands with Palestine, so you can't come out and vote for, it doesn't matter that it can't be both because it's being micro-targeted. I'm not showing you both, I'm just advertising to different sets of people both things, which, as he says, amazingly cynical. But then Josh goes on to say, well, we have what I'm going to describe next, which comes from another Musk-funded dark money operation. They have set up fake sites impersonating the Harris campaign using fake policy positions and then sending out text messages, also impersonating the campaign, which aimed to drive voters to that fake site. A lot of potential legal and regulatory questions turn on words like fake and impersonating, which we'll return to in a moment. It's a little complex. I found out about this, Josh says, from this article by Anna Massoglia in Open Secrets. We read it the other day. As far as I can tell, she's the first to report it. The project is the work of Building America's Future PAC, which seems to be largely and perhaps now entirely funded by Elon Musk. It's part of a network of Musk-funded PACs, which are run and or organized by a group of operatives who ran Ron DeSantis' failed presidential campaign. America PAC is another of these entities organized with the same money and by the same operatives, and they're the ones doing the petition in Pennsylvania, I think, right? Yes, that's the one doing the canvassing and get out the vote operations. So it makes sense for them to also have been the petition group and the sweepstakes group. As Massoglia reports, in late September, Building America's Future set up a site called Progress 2028, which purports to be Kamala Harris's response or counter to Project 2025. The site is designed to have the same general appearance of a Harris site in the sense of being in favor of gun regulation, supportive of gender-affirming care, etc., but with wildly over-the-top versions of these policies. So, for instance, it calls for minor children to be able to get sex change operations at school without the knowledge of or interference from parents, calls for a mandatory gun buyback program, etc., etc. The PAC also funded a text message campaign which pushes the same fake policy messages impersonating Harris's campaign and drives recipients of these texts to this site. And courtesy, it says, of a TPM reader, here is a screen cap of what one of those texts looks like. And I don't think I've gotten one. And I don't even know if I've gotten texts from the Harris campaign at this point, so I can't compare the two, but there's certainly nothing that gives away that it's facially fake, although I guess I'm sure there's a paid for by, but I can't even enlarge the picture big enough to see the type clearly about whether or not they actually disclose where it comes from. Now, let's go back to, quote, impersonating, Josh says. The texts and the site are clearly meant to make you think that these come from the Harris campaign or perhaps one of its associated committees. They refer to, quote, our plan, etc. There's no question this is the intent and the likely effect. The limited disclaimers say they are paid for by Progress 2028. But campaigns often have sites with separate names or even separate funding vehicles. It would be totally normal for the Harris campaign or for one of its associated committees to have set up a site with such a name. Legally speaking, however, it is funded by Progress 2028, and that is the fictitious name created by Building America's Future in late September in Virginia. The same intentionally misleading but not technically inaccurate labeling is followed on the website, the texts, and also the online ads, which Massoglia references. To get really specific, it was registered by a D.C.-based lawyer named James E. Tyrell III, whose law firm bio page you can see here from DickinsonWright.com. Dickinson-Wright.com is the firm at which he works. But you see the trick that they've done here is they've gone out and registered a PAC in the name of Progress 2028. And so even the fake texts where you can fake as much as you want, but you have to have a disclaimer that says who paid for it. All right, but the people we say paid for it is Progress 2028, which is the fake website which purports to be a Harris site with all the over-the-top information and positions on it. So it's very, very, very likely to create this kind of confusion that they're looking for here. So if these had said paid for by Harris for president, you'd have a straight-up campaign finance violation. But that's not what they're doing, so I don't think the Musk group is doing anything illegal here. The one part of this I'm not sure about, Josh says, is the texts. Texts like the U.S. mail and phone calls, come under specific regulatory and even legal frameworks. In some cases, it's not enough to be technically accurate in the way I'm describing above. If you're trying to impersonate someone, that can be enough to get you in trouble. That's very different from a website in which you can basically say anything. If you've gotten these texts, please let me know, Josh says. Also, if you're more versed than I am on the regulatory regime for text messaging, drop me a line as well. So he's definitely making some inquiries into this unusual situation. But again, once you have billions of dollars sitting there waiting to be burned, you can sacrifice an awful lot to try to figure out where the line lies. And as long as you're not facing criminal charges, if it's just fines from the FEC, you can pay those all day long, right, without even noticing. So, very interesting. And Open Secrets had, I think, a follow-up on this as well. Is this the one we read already? No, I think, this might have been it. I thought that there was follow-up on it, but I think we already did this one, which laid the groundwork for it, in which Josh was referring to. And I guess that's why they're next to one another in pocket. I guess also wise at this point, boy, there's a lot of things I really want to try and fit in here. But, we got all week to get to the rest of this stuff. But somewhere in here is there's a couple of great stories about the internal war going on in the Republican Party about who's paying for what parts of the Trump campaign. As we mentioned, there's the big outsourcing move. And so in earlier stages of the game, the GOTV operation was outsourced, amazingly enough, to Turning Point USA and what's his name? Charlie, I've forgotten his name already. But I don't know why I'm blanking on it, but it'll come up. Anyway, they were doing a horrible job with it, and, they were never up to the task of doing this. They've never done anything of the sort, but they were looking to grift off of the campaign, and they did. And then some others have come in at the end and said, well, I'll save you and I'll take over the GOTV operation. And now it's down to Elon Musk. So there's Reuters reporting on it and there is Rolling Stone reporting on it. And, they each have their own take on these things. The Reuters take in the headline, they're exclusive. I guess at that point they hadn't been the only one to report it. Pro-Trump group funded by Musk struggles with outreach targets. That's almost certainly the case. And as I mentioned to you, the uniquely weird issue they have going on is, well, we'll take over the GOTV operation and pay people to do door knocking. And then, oops, they scammed us with the door knocking claims. I now need to spend money checking on whether or not the people who are claiming to have done the door knocking are in fact doing all the door knocking. Great. I don't mind the money being burned. But on top of that, the Rolling Stone take, Aswin Subsang, on the authorship of this one, Republicans tell Trump that Elon Musk's super PAC is blowing it. So it's kind of interesting to see, Musk is single-handedly funding all of these operations and maybe not even doing a terrific job. And then the other one being more pointed and saying, he's actually, not only is he blowing it, but he's blowing his own money, reporting to himself on whether or not he's blowing it and by how much. We'll start with the Reuters piece, see whether we can't get through that, and then maybe a taste of the Rolling Stone article as well. Reuters October 18th piece written by Rachel Levy and Alexandra Ulmer, who report that the Political Action Committee funded by billionaire Elon Musk to help re-elect former U.S. President Donald Trump is struggling in some swing states to meet door-knocking goals and is investigating claims that some canvassers lied about the number of voters they have contacted, according to people involved in the group's efforts. The difficulties in pivotal ground states, including Wisconsin and Nevada, come as the group America PAC races to enlist voters behind the Republican candidate in the final 2 weeks before the November 5th election. 4 people involved in the group's outreach told Reuters that managers warned canvassers they are missing targets and needed to raise the number of would-be voters they contact. Alicia McMillan, who canvassed for the PAC in Wisconsin, said field organizers recently told campaigners they weren't reaching daily objectives and were on track to miss an ultimate goal of contacting 450,000 voters by Election Day. In one meeting with canvassers recorded by McMillan and reviewed by Reuters, a manager warned of the shortfall. We're not going to hit 450,000. Not with what we've got now, the manager said in the October 8th meeting. It isn't clear how many knocks the Wisconsin team have reached so far. McMillan, who worked for 2 local contractors hired by America PAC to knock on voter doors, said she is speaking out because she's concerned a shortfall could cost the former president a victory. If this isn't looked into in a timely manner, and now it can't be, this can result in a waste of time and money and risk President Trump winning the election, she told Reuters. McMillan said she was fired by one contractor after a pay dispute, but was hired shortly after by another. One canvassing manager in Arizona said leaders there had issued similar warnings. 3 other people familiar with the outreach told Reuters that Chris Young, a Musk aide and longtime Republican operative, had recently traveled to Nevada to audit whether door-knocking tallies there had been inflated by some of the workers hired by contractors. Another person briefed on the matter said America PAC was struggling to find sufficient people to conduct audits in other states. So they can't find enough people to do the door knocking. The door knockers are under pressure to raise their numbers, so they fake raising their numbers. Then they say we got to audit this because of all the people who are faking it, and then they can't hire enough auditors to do the auditing. This is awesome. Run it like a business. A person close to America PAC's operation said McMillan's account of the Wisconsin shortfall is inaccurate and that the group will reach its goals. Power of positive thinking, everybody. Senior operatives, the person added, routinely visit field offices to check on performance. And I'm sure that they do, but, how's the performance going? Good. All right, cool. Bye. What do? Follow along? You can't. Young didn't respond to a request for comment. America PAC's ongoing outreach is built around door-to-door efforts to convince low-propensity voters, those who may support Trump but could stay home instead of voting, to cast those ballots. The work has focused on battleground states where any small difference in voter turnout could clinch victory for Trump or Vice President Kamala Harris in an election that polls continue to say is too close to call. Musk, ranked by Forbes as the world's richest person, so far has supplied at least $75 million to America PAC alone, according to federal disclosures, making the group a crucial part of Trump's bid to regain the White House. The entrepreneur, if that's what they call him, anyway, behind car maker Tesla and rocket and satellite venture SpaceX, has increasingly supported Republican causes. What do you know? This year, the mogul became an outspoken supporter of Trump, who has said if elected, he'd appoint him to head Government Efficiency Commission. He's auditing his auditing. What a government efficiency expert he is. Musk didn't respond to a request for comment. A Trump campaign spokesperson declined to comment. Despite the influx of cash, some of America PAC's outreach has been plagued by disarray. The people familiar with its efforts told Reuters. As with many campaign operations, the group has hired contractors to carry out grassroots efforts, relying on hourly workers to knock on doors and speak face-to-face with potential voters. Some of those workers have been difficult to retain. 3 canvassers who asked not to be identified told Reuters the work isn't worth the pay, starting at some contractors as low as $20 per hour. In some cases, they added canvassers drive long distances in remote areas and don't get reimbursed for gasoline. In Nevada, it isn't clear whether Young's audit has concluded or reached any findings or prompted any change in America PAC's outreach. Text messages reviewed by Reuters show managers at one Nevada contractor, Lone Mountain Strategies, fretting because they had to fire canvassers who used smartphone apps to disguise their locations and lie about their door-knocking numbers. Our auditors keep catching people cheating. One of the messages said, we've fired 2 people today and auditors are going around checking doors for flyers. Lone Mountain Strategies didn't respond to the request for comment. America PAC recently updated its website prominently to display advertisements seeking canvassers. Pay starts at $30 an hour with bonuses for performance, the site reads, which of course means that you will cheat and report numbers such that you'll get the bonuses, and they'll have to audit and then audit the auditors. And golly gee, that's what running it like a business is really like. And remember, I will be the one in charge of ferreting out waste, fraud, and abuse, even though I cannot ferret out waste, fraud, and abuse from my own personally funded operations. That's just the way it is. Well, similar story as I mentioned in Rolling Stone. This time, though, with the focus being, as reported by not only Aswan Subseng, but Miles Klee and Andrew Perez, the idea being that Republicans are figuring out that this isn't working and telling anyone who'll listen that Elon Musk is blowing it, which is a huge relief, I think, for the Turning Point USA people who were going to be the targets of this wrath, but very wisely ducked out early and allowed their operations to be taken over by Elon Musk, who will instead take the blame but can afford to take the blame. The subheader tells us that Donald Trump's allies have been warning him that Musk's field operation is failing in key states and that it's being led by DeSantis's failed team. So I guess Elon Musk's publicist working hard to make sure that the DeSantis team takes the blame for that instead of him. He is, of course, a super genius, and there's no blaming him for anything. So there you go. I guess he's rich enough that he can escape the blame for all of that. And as I see, the clock says we don't have time to read through this one today, but really what we should do is throw it back together with some of the reporting on the network of billionaire funders who are behind Trump and paying for the things that his campaign can't or won't pay for. The amount of money that Elon Musk has given to Stephen Miller's super PACs to conduct these activities. And, of course, if we scroll far enough back in Pocket, we'll get back to those stories about that we never did get to read on the air about how badly Turning Point USA was blowing this opportunity as well. As a matter of fact, there we go. I finally found the thing. How far back do we have to go in order to do this? Josh Marshall was talking about it as well back on October 3rd, digging into Turning Point USA's role in the Trump 2024 ground game. By the time we got around to reading this, it was already turned over from Charlie Kirk, there we are, of Turning Point USA, to Elon Musk and his various PACs for him to take the blame for it ultimately. I guess that's the smartest thing I've ever seen Charlie Kirk do. All right, time for us to hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, probably the smartest thing I've done all day as well. What's he got on tap for you today? Josh Hawley has been caught in a humiliating scandal. What? Okay. Everybody tune in to find out what humiliating scandal that is. And then on the rest of the menu, two hecklers complained to Fox News after they were escorted from Vice President Kamala Harris's rally in Wisconsin that they were pushed by an elderly woman. Oh no, everybody's nightmare.
Radio.com.
Very manly.
Listening to Kagro in the morning with David Waldman.
Ah, look here. There's highly compensated gun tubers are in a panic as YouTube cracks down on firearms content. Oh, maybe they can stop telling people how to bump fire handguns. And CVS workers have gone on strike at 7 Southern California stores for better pay and health care. Boy, you'd think they'd get better health care at CVS. Good luck to them. We'll see you tomorrow.